Welcome, everyone, to Hands On Politics here with a couple of brothers from the Bronx coming live to you on our feed on Facebook, and hope you join us on YouTube. Subscribe to us. This is episode number 84, where a couple of brothers from the Bronx talk about politics, helping folks that want to understand politics understand it better, because we try to explain the issues from a very common perspective, the common sense perspective of the Bronx. Ken, it's nice to be back with you, and we're going to be talking about a number of issues, and our own very own Bo Snerdley can share with our audience what we're going to talk about today. But in the meantime, Ken, how are you doing?
Rich, I'm doing great. The Olympics are going on right now, and so Sherry and I are enjoying those. We're watching the downhill skiing, the giant slalom, all that stuff, the luge, the skeleton. Sherry likes figure skating. I'm not huge into figure skating, but it is pretty amazing.
See, I love it. I love figure skating. I always have loved it for a long time, and so that's been fun to watch. But we've been watching the same thing you and Sherry have as well.
Yeah. Now, I do enjoy the curling, but here's the thing,
I love it.
And I'm like, they shouldn't be going for that one. They should be going here because that's going to, yeah. So I enjoy that. Now, here's the thing, Rich. I know that you and Justine, at least in the past, used to do cross-country skiing, and I have watched some cross-country skiing. But I also know that you like Jim Gaffigan, the comedian Jim Gaffigan.
Love Jim Gaffigan.
And Jim Gaffigan, he says, cross-country skiing seems like a sport invented after someone bought skis and realized they didn't live near a mountain. So I watch it. I don't really get it, because it reminds me of like when I do go skiing, and if I ski past the chairlift and I have to go up the hill, and I'm like, oh, this is misery. So I know you guys like it for some reason, but I don't get the cross-country skiing.
Yeah, we don't do it much anymore, but we do. We used to love it. It's really a great exercise. And, you're in some beautiful, terrain, and you get to see nature, and you're close to nature, and it's nice and quiet. And to your point, though, going up the hills is never fun, but it's like hiking. It's a little bit more difficult than hiking, depending on the trail. But I love the Winter Olympics. I'll tell you, I've been to Italy twice, Ken, and I'm sorry, I've only been to Italy once, been to Europe a couple of times. But I would love to go see, what is it, Cortina or Corina?
Yeah, it's outside Milan, somewhere
up in my God. And Milan, too. It looks really beautiful, that northern Italy. We've been down in the south of Italy, and Positano Coast and all that, the Amalfi Coast in Positano and that area. But northern Italy looks absolutely gorgeous, and I will bet that I've been watching like Snoop Dogg, who cracks me up. I have to say Snoop has really changed his game, and he's definitely a story of redemption in many ways. But there's also the other guy from the Hunger Games, the guy that plays the main guy. He goes out to restaurants and stuff. I can't remember his name, but he's
Stanley Tucci or something like that.
Yeah, he's Italian. He speaks Italian. He goes to these Italian places, and they look fabulous. And my guess is that place is going to be inundated with world travelers, because it's just a beautiful area.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I went to Switzerland, several months ago. I think anywhere in the Alps is just beautiful. So you get northern Italy, southern, whatever that is, Switzerland. Anywhere in that area, I think is beautiful. Yeah. So I've been enjoying the Winter Olympics. That's been pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been a few. I just there's been some really good stories. And then there's, people that just, I wish the reporters would stop asking any kind of political questions. And
Oh
if
yeah,
they do, I wish the athletes would just ignore them and move on, because that's not what that's all about. We just want to come together, watch great athletes
yeah,
perform, and see if they can handle the pressure. There've been the figure skater that was the quad god. That
yeah,
poor guy. He did great in the teams, and then when it came to his moment in the sun, young guy, he'll be back. I felt so bad for him. He just fell apart, and that's the power of the Olympics. It's like somebody comes along and just has their moment in the sun that you don't expect, and I felt bad for him. And uh there was the woman last night.
well, but on that guy,
Yeah.
I felt really really bad for him, but I think he's had a pretty darn good response to that. He's like, yeah, I messed up, but
Yep.
I will be back, and that's the attitude you have to have.
Absolutely.
And so he's impressed me when I've seen him speak after he fell. He could be crying, and I'm sure he did a little bit, but he could be whining and complaining and doing whatever. But he's just like, hey, I'll be back. So
Yeah,
that was
good
nice to hear.
sportsmanship. Absolutely.
Yes,
And a couple of the older skiers, the one from Italy that came back, and there was the one after the knee surgery just months ago, came back
yeah,
and won for Italy on the downhill slalom or whatever it was. And the bobsledder, who's the mom with the two young kids that finally won a gold. She's never had a gold, and she's like 40 something years old. And I love those stories, like
mm,
never giving up, determination, going for it. And whether they're American or not, the story, when you see personal trials and tribulations, and coming back, it's a real good lesson for us all.
yeah. I know. I totally agree. So I've enjoyed them, and even the figure skating when Sherry's watching, I have enjoyed those performances. I really was impressed by Japan. Japan
Oh,
has some really good
absolutely.
figure skaters, and there's
Absolutely.
this one girl who just lit up the whole arena. She big smile, and
Her smile was
she's
awesome. Yeah.
wasn't that I you
Yeah.
could really I don't normally say this,
Yeah.
but you could
Yeah.
really feel her
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
And so I was like, boy, and she did great,
Yeah,
but
she's
she just
actually
had the
leading after
perfect
the
attitude.
yeah, leading after the short program, and she just was out there having fun. And the other American, I think it's Kim or Cam, not the one that they highlighted that I'm not a big fan of, but the one that had multicolored hair. She had like a blonde into a dark,
Yeah.
smiled a lot. I really enjoyed her attitude too. She's out there. It's about the art for her, and
Mhm.
I thought that, she's a creative type. You can definitely tell. And she just had a lot of fun. And it's like she's in fourth place in the short program. When they go to the long program, she'll be in the running. And it's just so nice to see when they're enjoying themselves.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the pressure has got to be so phenomenal. And you're like, every time they go up for the triple loop, or the double sow cow, and the
Yeah.
triple toe loop, whatever, you're like hanging on for them, like, yes. And no matter what country it is, you're just like, come on, you can do it. And the triple into the double into the quadruple, and it's it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, just one more thing for me. These people have worked for 4 years, and
Hmm.
so many of these competitions last maybe 3
Absolutely.
minutes, and they come down to, like, maybe you don't
Yeah.
complete that spin, your skate doesn't come down perfectly, so that 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and it
Yeah.
comes down to, like, one little tiny thing, and, yeah, it can be disappointing, but I really do love those people who are just like, "I'm at the Olympics, I'm gonna enjoy it,
Yeah.
and even if things don't go perfectly, I'm gonna be thankful that I'm here. So, yeah,
Yeah,
good stuff,
it's
Rich.
you don't want people, and not that we were going to talk about the Olympics, but it's fun to talk about. It's one of those things, like, it's their whole life. When you
Mhm.
see these people, they go back, and they, as a kid, they were out on their pond
Yeah.
skating, like the speed skater who won the gold medal, another phenom. He's absolutely great. But it seems like you're better off not having an expose on you, because without that pressure, I
Mhm.
think it becomes more fun, because you almost become the underdog because they're not focused on you. So
Yeah.
it's almost like the people who have had the most scrutiny on them, a couple of them have performed, and a few of them have really sunk to the pressure. So
Yep.
I enjoy. We used to watch the Olympics all the time when I was
Oh,
younger,
yeah.
and then there were a number of years just got too busy. But then we watch we loved the summer because our kids swim, so the
Mhm.
swimming was always big. But we hadn't watched the winter in a long time, and it's nice to get back and see it now that we're retired. You have time to kind of focus in on it. So it's uh
Wait,
it's a
one more thing.
yeah.
There's a Seinfeld skit where he's talking about the difference between like the greatest skier or the fastest runner ever, and a person nobody ever remember, like fastest ever, and nobody ever knows his name. Fastest ever. It's like
Yeah,
it's a matter
uh,
of not
tenths of
even
a
the name.
second. Yeah.
It's second place, and you'll never be heard about again. And it's just that little tiny bit. So it's, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they measure things in thousandths of
Yeah.
a second.
It's
So,
crazy.
yeah. Anyway, okay.
Yeah,
I know
love it.
that's enough
Okay.
on that.
So people have had enough time to check out our agenda. So let's get started. Ken, you wanted to talk a little bit about economic indicators.
Yeah, and this is just a quick thing because in the news, you're going to hear negative things all the time. I think that there is a concerted effort on the part of Democrats to try to create chaos in the United States. I decided, let me go in and look at the latest economic indicators and to see how we're doing as a country. GDP, this is 3Q, the finalized 3Q, 4.4% growth. That's very strong growth. Fourth quarter is supposed to come in even stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation very low, 2.4. The housing affordability index, which anytime this is over 100%, that indicates things are getting better. So even housing affordability is getting better. I know people aren't feeling that as much as they'd like to at this point, but still headed in the right direction. Then you have unemployment rate 4.3, jobs report 130,000 jobs created, expected to be 70,000 jobs created. But this comes on top of all the government jobs we're reducing.
Yeah, exactly.
The ISM manufacturing index, anytime that's above 50, that means that we're manufacturing is growing. A PCE, which is basically inflation at a personal consumption expenditure rate, that's about 2.8. Consumer confidence is increasing. Interest rates are coming down. They will come down even more when we get Kevin Warsh in there. So my overall point is just to say to people, you're hearing all this negative stuff out there, but the fact of the matter is things are, all the statistics that you look at, even like violent crime, it just has gone down dramatically. So a lot of really good things to be excited about, Richie, that's happening in the United States. And I just wanted to kind of start out our show with that. So what do you think?
No, I think it again, it's always how people feel, but there was a study done way back, and people were asked about how they felt about unemployment, the economy, and things like that. And they were like, "Oh, not so good." And they were then it was one step deeper. Why do you feel that way? Are you not doing good? And it's like, no, I'm doing great,
Yeah.
but my neighbor, I'm sure, is not doing as well as me. And it's almost this projection thing
Mhm.
that if you're exposed too much to the media, their attempt to make everything look so bad. If you're on social media all the time, and we talk about this all the time, you feel like the whole place is crumbling. But when you look at your own 401k, your retirement, you're going traveling, you're doing well, the price of eggs is down. It's not as you've gotten your COLA and your Social Security, and your money's going a little bit further. And, President Trump has stopped institutional investor from buying homes. You're seeing that. The inventories start to grow. You're not seeing those things, but you're projecting that what if the media is saying it, there must be a neighbor or something that's going through this. So I think there's some of that going on. The good news is we have time, and we have good news, more opportunity for good news to change attitudes for the midterms. But Ken, here's the big thing in the midterms. If it goes by a comparison of where we were with Joe Biden and where we are with President Trump and where we seem to be going, it should be a landslide, hands down landslide. Here's where the big problem is for the Republicans. They eat themselves in the primary, and then they get to the general election, and they are pissy at each other, and and out of principle, they don't go out to the polls because their guy lost in the primary. There is no better way to defeat yourself, cut off your nose, spite your face, than if your person loses in the primary, you still got to get out and vote, because that's what the Democrats do. And that's the way we end up losing elections. And here in New York, and they almost shoot themselves, in a circle. The Republican Party in New York endorsed Blakeman, who is the guy the Republican running against Hochul. And instead of doing a primary with a guy named Larry Hunt that wanted to go against him in the primary, basically the GOP in New York anointed Blakeman, which I don't like, okay? But I'm not voting for Hochul, and I will go out and vote. But this Larry Hunt has he's pretty much a libertarian, but he definitely draws from the conservative base of New York.
Sure.
And what'll end up happening is those guys are going to be pissed. And do I agree with what the GOP did? No. But am I going to stay home because of it? Absolutely not, because we have to defeat Hochul. She's destroying our state. So Republicans out there, you can battle all you want in the primaries, but you got to come out to the polls in November, because that's how you got to maintain the House. Or if we don't maintain the House, we are so screwed. And so that's my message to the GOP. Have your battles, but come to the game at the general.
That's right. Yeah. Fight all you want during the primaries, I guess. But yeah, you got to come together. Yeah. And we do a terrible job of that. Well, Rich, let me, I want to talk a little bit about Marco Rubio at the Munich Security Conference. And this is a place where it's an international conference on global security. Leaders from all over the world come in. There's major speeches. It's a venue for behind closed doors type of diplomacy and things like that. But I do want to I want to mention something. And a lot of what is talked about there has to do with NATO and relationships between the United States and the European countries. But this is the preamble to the NATO treaty, and I'm just going to focus on the second bullet. So people who are part of this treaty, they're determined to safeguard the freedom, common heritage, and civilization of their people, the Europeans and the United States and Canada, that founded on the principles of democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law. So this is what NATO was founded on to a large degree, is safeguarding basically our heritage. And now, we can talk a little bit about Marco Rubio's speech. First of all, did you have an opportunity to see it, Rich?
I did, Ken. I thought he was fabulous. He was stern, he was truthful, and he was unapologetic. And he kind of laid it out. He was the adult in the room saying, no matter what our differences are, we have a common culture we have to fight for together. You need to be able to fight for your culture as well. You know, it shouldn't be the United States' job to fight for your culture. And he basically put a mirror back on, Western culture and said, you're allowing yourself to be undermined. And I thought it was a fabulous speech. And I think that he got a standing ovation, great reception. And most people understand that you got to be an adult when it comes to this whole, they called me a name stuff. Come on.
Yeah.
You got to be further above that. But Rubio is a beautiful spokesperson. I think he's laying a great foundation for a potential, 28 run, because he just has shown his credentials all across the world and everything that he's doing. And I loved the speech, Ken.
I thought it was fantastic. And it made me think of a few things. Number one, Marco Rubio, and I would include J.D. Vance in here. They are the yin to Donald Trump's yang. They complement Trump's gruff and, his verbose style with a more measured, policy-driven approach. And the other thing that it reminded me, I took a class in college, global technopolitics and whatever. It's about international relations and things like that. And we talked a little bit about Winston Churchill's Iron Curtain speech, where he gave a speech in Missouri, in Fulton, Missouri, I think it was, at a small college. And he talked about an iron curtain coming down between the West and the East. And he was talking about the Soviet Union and what they were doing with the Eastern Bloc, taking away freedoms and things like that. And I thought that Rubio's speech was similar in that he's telling us that, listen, all this immigration that's coming in here, it is taking away the freedoms that we know and that we respect. Like we're importing people from, third world countries who do not have the same types of values that we have. And so I thought, just like Winston Churchill's speech was a warning, was a wake-up call, I thought Marco Rubio, his speech was a wake-up call to Western civilization, saying, listen, we have Mozart, we have Adam Smith, we have all these people that we should be so proud about. And meanwhile, we're importing people who don't love those things. And in fact, they hate those things. Yeah, they hate America. And so I just thought it was such a great speech, such a wake-up call. And it was so refreshing. And I really hope, it was nice to see the standing ovation. It was nice to see the response that he gets. And I hope that it opens up the eyes of a lot of people up over in Europe, because Europe is as woke as they get.
Yeah.
And I hope we open up their eyes to say, listen, we're in a war. We're in a culture war, in a universal or a global culture war. And we need to protect our civilization, because our civilization
is under attack.
It deserves protecting, Rich.
Absolutely. He just set the tone, and I was really proud of his speech. And then, to your point about this is a security conference global, you wonder why a governor of Illinois or governor of Michigan and a representative, former bartender from the Bronx, and a governor of California were there. And, obviously they're all aligning for a run in 2028. And that was a complete embarrassment of especially for two of them. And then the other one was just apologizing for President Trump and that he's only temporary. And we're going to show some stuff here, Ken, but it was like watching a Olympic athlete trash the country they're supposed to represent, right? And it's that same mentality. The Democrats think that trashing our values, trashing our system on the world stage is appropriate. And it's just, it's despicable. And, I know we have some clips on it, but lay it out. What were your thoughts, Ken,
Well,
with the Democrats there?
well, yeah, the first thing I would say is what I always heard when I was growing up and as an adult was that politics ends at the water's edge, right? You can debate fiercely at home, but when you go into the global meeting with global leaders, you stand united. You don't trash each other. And I don't know when that changed. I don't know if Donald Trump participated in that. I do remember when Barack Obama was elected early in his first term, he gave what was known as the apology tour, where he went to the Middle East and he's like, hey, we've been arrogant, we've been obnoxious, and basically we apologize for who we have been during our whole existence. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You're talking about the country that saved Europe in World War I, the country that saved Europe in World War II, the country that saved Europe during the Cold War, the country that destroyed the Soviet Union. I'm like, wait a second. I know we're not perfect, but we're pretty darn good. And meanwhile, we have Barack Obama going around trashing our country. And I don't understand it, Rich. When did this become an acceptable thing to do?
I have no idea, but it's very frustrating because it's easy to go if you are going to be a Democrat, candidate for the primary in 2028. You can simply go there and you can express your views and still support what we're doing and come off as a leader, and say, we have current policies. Our attempt is to make Europe stronger. In my view, I would do this kind of thing, but we support what the president's doing now. But would I change it? I would. It's become just a global campaign because what's happened, Ken. We have a global system that is trying to destroy us. We have democratic socialists, communists, Marxists. They're all trying to destroy our country, and they are attacking us through our democratic policies and the Democratic Party and the media. So what this is an all-out assault on American values first, Western values second, and they are trying to undermine individual-based freedom for this collectivism that, the Mandamis of the world represent. And if you don't think we're under assault, attack for our values, you haven't been paying close enough attention. And, it sounds, like we're demagoguing here, but the evidence is very, very clear. And the people that went to this Munich conference are part of the problem that we're seeing, that they talk about how they support American values, but you just watch what they do. None of it supports the American value, the American Constitution, which has made us exceptional.
Exactly. So let me show you. The first clip I'll show is from AOC. AOC was basically asked, if China invaded Taiwan, what would the United States do? So let's take a quick look at that.
The U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is a.
Can I have a coloring book?
This is, of course, a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get
Can I
to
phone
that
a
point.
friend?
And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic, research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation.
And
I'll take ranch dressing with that salad, Alex.
They don't teach international policy or foreign policy at the mixology school, Rich. Not that there's anything wrong with being a bartender in the Bronx.
Absolutely. Bartenders it's an excellent career. Absolutely.
But yeah,
that was so third grade. And, I even get a little bit annoyed at the Republican answers to those questions where they talk about, just having, we're maintaining the policy of neutral, whatever they call it. The answer to that question should be absolutely. Taiwan is an independent country, and if China goes in, we will be there to defend them, period. And if we're not, then we should change that stance. To be afraid of China, to me, that's what gives them the incentive to continue to do what they're doing. They're gonna build up their military no matter what we say on Taiwan. And if they know that we are going to defend it, they are going to think 3 times, not just 2 times. They're going to think 3 times before ever doing anything there, because that, I was so afraid during Biden they were going to just show up and do just what Russia did to Georgia, under Obama, and just walk in, take it away. And, we would be sitting there, all the newscasters would be going, oh, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? And China just walk in and take the place. I was afraid that was going to happen. We just have to let them know it ain't happening. That's the bottom line. So I get annoyed from both sides. What are you hiding? Are you gonna? Are we not gonna? Are we gonna? What is that game? That's ridiculous.
Speak clearly. Speak clearly.
Speak clearly and carry a big stick.
That's right. But here, I find this interesting. AOC, and the next clip we're going to see comes from Gretchen Whitmer, from the governor of Michigan. They both went to the Munich Security Conference to talk about international security. And AOC gives that word salad response. Like, obviously, she didn't prepare for it. Right. And Whitmer, maybe not as bad as AOC, but still, let's show this. She didn't know what to say in response to a question about Ukraine. Yeah. Ukraine has been in the news for the last several years and one of the biggest issues in the world today, and she didn't have a response to it. So let's take a look at this, Rich.
On Ukraine, what does victory look like?
Ambassador? No, please. I'd love to hear your answer.
It is. The two that I am on the panel with are much more steeped in foreign policy than a governor is.
But, and why are you there? Ken, if you're on the stage, first of all, she was handing it off to the ambassador, who would definitely have a answer to it. She was trying to get him to go first so she could parlay off of what he said, because she went to that conference unprepared. And again, if you want to be president, you should, especially Ukraine, it's been there for a long time, you should have something. What does it look like? What does victory look like? And right now, it should be things like, well, it would look like peace and a negotiated security agreement with the NATO allies, that wherever they negotiate, wherever Vladimir, Zelensky and Putin decide is an acceptable area for the border, when they decide that, there's peace, and we will be there for security. We will bring our businesses in there so that there's an American presence, so that Russia can never move forward again. I mean, you got to have something on Ukraine because
Mhm.
Ukraine's been there for a long, long time.
Yeah. What do you think? I didn't take the time to do any research on this, but I would guarantee you that Gretchen Whitmer has criticized Donald Trump's foreign policy with regards to Ukraine and just foreign policy in general. And so what you find, we're going to see a clip from Gavin Newsom where he's just trashing the president. But what you get from Democrats at this Munich conference is they don't know what they're going to do when it comes to foreign policy in the international realm. However, they're very good at criticizing Trump.
Right.
And that's not somebody who I don't need somebody who wants to become president, who's good at criticizing, but has no ideas on their own. And that's what you're finding out. AOC, no ideas. Gretchen Whitmer, no ideas. And in a second here, we'll see Gavin Newsom, no ideas, but they all can criticize Trump. And isn't that what all Democrats have done over the last year, is they criticize Trump, but they have no solutions.
Absolutely.
And, that's what we're dealing with, Rich.
Yeah, Newsom is America's used car salesman. He's a slimy scum.
He absolutely is.
You understand that Donald Trump is not only temporary, but he may be among the most un-American presidents ever to have resided at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I really believe that. I don't say that lightly.
Sounds like Joe Biden right there.
Ken, where are the follow-up questions? Like, can you please give me an example of what you mean by, his corrupt policies? Can you give me an example? And then can you share with me what you would do differently? And how come you don't, there's a billion questions. You don't want voter ID, and your state is falling into disarray, has the largest homeless population, the most,
Corruption,
migration leaving the state, businesses, just the most recent, the businesses are leaving, the billionaires are leaving. Is California an example of how you would lead America? Even a simple question like that, they never ever follow up, and Democrats always count on the media is just an extension of the party, but they fall apart. They're a million miles wide with criticism and about a quarter inch deep, and as soon as you ask one or two questions for examples, or you challenge it with a fact of some kind, they're done. And it becomes embarrassing very quickly. And unfortunately, our media never, ever does the job that they should be doing when they allow these left politicians to get away with innuendos and assumptions and broad brush accusations. It's all garbage. It's like the Epstein files. They just create this cloud around it, and they're the ones that are involved in it. Epstein was a big supporter of the Democratic Party, but they cloud everything, and it's just it's very frustrating.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, Rich. Listen, how about we switch gears and we go to domestic policies for a minute?
Sure.
All right.
Sounds good.
Let's see. Okay, there's been two shootings that have happened recently. One was in Canada and one was in Rhode Island. Both by transgender females, meaning it's a biological male and, dressing up as a woman. And they both killed people in their family. One of the reasons that I bring this up and I want to talk about it is transgenders make up like an infinitesimal percentage of our population, but it seems like they make up a large percentage of mass shootings that are taking place in the United States. And a couple things that I also find interesting is it takes a while to find out who these people are. until you read articles and you're like, boy, that sounds funny. Person has two names, Robert and Roberta, and you're like, oh, they're transgender. So like the media bends over backwards to try not to say what type of person this was, unless it's a white Christian male. Then there's like, they'll post the person's face there and things like that. But I also want to just show a picture of these two individuals. That's the first guy from Canada. And here's the second guy from Rhode Island. And I don't know, I just wanted to see if you have any takes on this situation. I know we've talked about it a number of times, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, first, Ken, for any parent that is struggling, has a child struggling with their identity, I feel for them, right? It's like they're caught in a really, really difficult place. And the bottom line for the whole transgender movement is that it is actually a mental diagnosis called gender dysphoria, and it has always been treated as a mental illness. And it has nothing to do with sexual orientation. That is a totally different thing. They're not even in the same category in my mind. These are people who don't understand who they are as a biological being. They feel like they should be a different gender, and there's something really disturbing about that. And I don't think the answer is to promote it or to celebrate it. It's not something to celebrate. It's something to look at really seriously and say, why is it you were born a male and you want to be a woman? What is that? I don't get it, because it's really not. It's very confusing to me, and it's got to be confusing to them.
Yes.
I'm a boy, but I want to be a woman. There's got to be some fundamental mental issue that we're not addressing properly. And to celebrate it, it never seems to fix it, no matter whether they become a male or become a female in their mind, because they never do. You can't switch that. You can you can give a man boobs, and you can, castrate people, and you could do a lot of damage to people, but you really never change who they were born to be physically. So the mental part of it never seems to get better. It only gets worse. And so my heart breaks for families that have to deal with this. But when it gets to the point of like this guy that just shot his family at the hockey rink, that is, they knew he was like, he's got a gun. He's seen, target practicing. He's already got a bad relationship with the family. He's got a bad relationship with his kids. He's known to be, explosive. He's just like somebody that really needed to be monitored, and there should have been some kind of interjection there of this person. I don't know much about the one in Toronto, but it seems like this was on a path to be exactly what it was, and we're not doing anybody any favors by accepting this or celebrating, especially celebrating it. This is not something to celebrate. This is something to really monitor and help people understand what this is. And I think the media does it a very, very big injustice by saying we should celebrate it. At the same time, we're seeing per capita, their issues in the violence of going after people because they feel like they are being attacked, but people are just like, it's strange. Come on. For it's common sense. It's a strange thing, and people kind of don't want to be involved with it. So they take that personally, and it becomes a vendetta against the people who are kind of hoping that those people get help. And I don't know, to me, it's just a really sad issue. But the bottom line is you got to be aware when you're dealing with this in a high school, if your kids are around kids that are transitioning of some kind, you got to be aware of what's going on there, because it seems like there's a lot of violence that's been going around because of the celebration and the acceptance of this as trying to make it normal. So it's a really difficult issue, Ken, and it's sad. And it's become another political issue where it's really a mental health issue, where we should be figuring out what we can do there to help these individuals live a productive life, no matter what that turns out to be. Does that make any sense?
Oh, no, that makes very good sense. To your point, it's not like, my gosh, I hate these people. Mental health is a serious problem in the United States today. It seems like it's much more serious today than it was when we were growing up. Maybe that's social media, maybe that's 24-hour news cycle that we see it all the time. But mental health, and I'm not just talking about transgenderism, I know people who have mental health issues, and it's kind of like, well, what do we do about it?
Right.
And I don't know.
Difficult. Yeah.
Like, they have to realize that they have a problem, first of all, and many of the people don't realize that they have a problem. Again, not necessarily talking about transgender at this point, but it just seems that there's so many people who just have separated from reality. But what we're doing, or what liberal media is doing with transgenders, is, I think, tragic. Like, if you had somebody who has anorexia or bulimia, would you look at them and say, oh yeah, you look kind of fat in those pants? No, you wouldn't say that. If you had somebody who is hearing voices and has, schizophrenia, would you say, oh yeah, I hear those voices too? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't mock them, but you would try to do things to help them. But one thing you wouldn't accept their alternate reality as being reality. But here's what some of the things that I'm concerned about, Rich. As I said, they have real mental problems, transgenders do, but they're told by leftists that they can transform into a different sex, whether it be just changing your clothes or getting body parts chopped off or added on. But once that happens, the people around them, people that they don't know, they're going to realize that these people are their biological self. Like, they look, some transgenders do look like the new sex. You can't tell the difference, but that's really the exception. So most of these people get these things done to them, and people are looking at them, and like, they go into a restaurant, and if it's a girl or a man dressed up as a girl, the waiter will refer to them as a man. And they can't believe it, and it's awful. And, so they're being told they can become the opposite sex, but society looks at them, not to be mean or anything, but they recognize them as who they are, their biological sex. They don't look at them as this new person that they've become. And then you have the liberal media and leftists. They'll say, oh, it's the Republicans, oh, it's the conservatives, oh, it's the Christians. It's these people who are keeping you from becoming the real you. And I think that's what's happening with these shootings, is that these people have emotional problems to begin with, but then the emotional problems turn to rage when they go through these transitions, and then they're not accepted, and they're being told it's their fault. It's the white Christians' fault. And so they feel justified in acting out their anger toward these people, like Jesse Van whatever criticized at home for what he was doing. And I'm sure Robert and Roberta got criticized at home. And so that anger is go after these people who are not accepting you. And I think that's what the big problem is. We're taking these people with mental problems who need help, who need our compassion, but the liberals are pushing them to a point where they're feeling rage at the people who treat them as they really are.
No, it does.
But it's a shame. But
Yeah.
I guess the most important point is we don't hate you. We feel for you, and we want you to get help. But one thing we can't do is play along with what you're going through. We can't do it as a society.
We spend so much money on, like, whether it's illegal people here, the homeless issue, billions and billions and billions of dollars go towards illegal and homeless. And if you look at the homeless community, much of it is mental illness, addiction, things of that nature. When are we going to figure out that we've got to treat people, not kind of comply with their, what their reality is? We've got to show them the way, that there's a better way, whether that's addiction, getting off of drugs and alcohol. That's a good thing. That'll get you to where you can get a job and you won't be homeless. Or if you're schizophrenic and you need, psychiatrist help along with some medications, when are we going to be adults about this? And to your point about the media trying to create this acceptance of this, it's not anybody dealing with mental health issues, and all families get impacted by it in some way, whether it's their own family, friends, relatives, and all that. The bottom line is we don't have the services for that, but we certainly have the money for it if we direct the money in the right way and we stop funding NGOs that don't do the work necessary and they're just money laundering operations for political operations, if you know what I mean. We've been talking about that for a long time. If we were funding true addiction centers, mental health centers, and we were making sure, not accepting people living on the street, you're going to get help and we're going to put you in a shelter, I think we'd have a better result than trying to accommodate all of these different problems we have in society. So I think it all kind of goes together there.
And let me just make one last point, and that is there are a lot of drugs that people get, and a lot of pharmaceuticals are very helpful. I mean, I know people who are benefiting from pharmaceuticals, and so I'm not in any way, shape, or form criticizing just drugs in general. However, when you have transgenders and they're getting hormone blockers, or whatever types of drugs that they're getting, do we really understand the impact that these have on people? Could people have bad reactions to them that we're not following because
we
there's
don't want
a
to be
stigma?
honest? Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Wait a second. A lot of transgenders use this drug, and if we criticize this drug, therefore we're somehow, in the minds of some people, criticizing the transgenders. Is that happening? I don't know, but I just do know that it seems like there are so many more mental health issues in the world today than there were when we were growing up.
Social media doesn't help that, Ken.
Yeah,
Social
exactly.
media
Yeah,
is
that's right.
huge.
I'm not blaming it all on the drugs. There's a lot of things that it could be,
Yeah.
but I'm just
Absolutely.
but I'm just saying, are we taking a look at, the side effects of some of these drugs? Because one person might respond very well to a particular drug, another
Absolutely.
person might not. And I'm just kind of throwing it out there.
Oh, yeah.
Do
No,
we
that's
really know?
definitely part of the equation for sure.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Rich?
Nope. I think we've worked that one. And what's up next, Ken?
Okay, let's see. Okay, this is I think this is interesting here, the Supreme Court term. The Supreme Court, they're going to come out with some rulings on February 20th. So
Okay.
Friday, February 20th, Tuesday the 24th, and Wednesday the 25th. Some of the cases that we've been hearing about are going to be they're going to have their rulings, their opinions are going to come out. But I do want to say this about Donald Trump. Trump has been transforming the legal environment that we're in several significant ways. First of all, he's shaped the Supreme Court, right, by appointing Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett. And I think maybe as importantly, he is pushing things, right? Like we talk about it, and you mentioned it earlier. Trump is going through the proper channels. He's letting these,
Oh,
when he
absolutely.
pushes something, if he does an executive order and he's really pushing the envelope, he's forcing people to take him to court,
Yep.
to sue him over certain things, whether it be tariffs, immigration, you name it. But he's like forcing these issues to bubble up to the Supreme Court. And he's giving the Supreme Court the opportunity to overturn some of the crazy rulings that have taken place under liberal courts. And so I think that's interesting. So, we have certain cases like the tariffs case, redistricting, transgender, birthright citizenship, Rich. I'm going to toss it back to you, but what are your thoughts, maybe big picture thoughts about Trump and changing the legal landscape, or if you want to talk about any particular issues that you're interested in the opinions that are going to be coming out?
No, I think you set it up well, Ken, that the way to address issues, the way Trump addresses issues, is exactly that. He pushes. He did it with abortion, which simply took Roe v. Wade, which was made out of, pure cloth. There was no constitutional foundation for what they decided, the right to privacy or whatever they used. And he pushed it and gave the Supreme Court the opportunity to go back and fix really bad law. And all it simply did was push it back to the states, because there's nothing in the Constitution that the federal abortion laws were just pushed back to the states. So now the people have the opportunity in every state to decide abortion laws. So it's very much his strategy. And I know he gets a lot of criticism because he did have the opportunity to add 3 justices, but that is the consequences of elections. And that's why presidential elections are so important and senatorial elections are so important, because this is what we have the opportunity to do, is fix stuff. Like my big one on here is the birthright citizenship. The fact that we allow somebody to come over the border, plop into a hotel and have a baby and say that now that baby is an American citizen because they came on, they came across the border and went to a hotel in Tucson, Arizona. That's, to me, insane, because they're basing that on the 14th Amendment, which was intended for the slave population that was forced to be here. And now you didn't want to have people saying, hey, they're slaves, they don't have the opportunity to stay here. They never had the they were brought here against their will. So the 14th Amendment was focused on the birthright citizenship of slaves. And to extend that to people coming across the border, it's like, Ken, if if your wife is pregnant and you go on a European vacation and she has the baby early on a cruise ship, is she a Viking baby? Does Viking Cruise Lines now have to take care of that baby forever and give it the luxury suite and feed and clothe it, and wherever it goes, it can never get rid of that baby? I'm being facetious, obviously, but, people have, military folks when they're stationed in foreign lands. I think John McCain at one point, wasn't John McCain born but he was born to two American citizens on a military base. And even if it wasn't a military base, they're two American citizens that were traveling. And the birthright is, of course your kid is American. But if you've got two Mexican parents and they run across the border and pop out a kid in Tucson, or they're coming to Disney World, okay? They're a nice couple from Mexico. They come to Disney World, and by chance, the woman has the baby in, the hotel at Disney. And in Frontier Village. And so those two people go back to Mexico and they go on living. That baby is Mexican because it was born to Mexican parents. Nobody would argue that they're an American citizen just because they were born there. They go back and it's like nothing happens. But for some reason, because our immigration policy is so broken, that we have used that people have used that policy to get in here to get the benefits of what American citizenship brings. It's a backdoor way to undermine the legal system. And this, to me, I don't know where it's going to end up, but if I know where, in my mind, where Clarence Thomas is going to end up, and more than likely, the most conservative judges are going to end up, is that this makes no sense. This was created. If they go back to the intent, why was that why was that amendment put forth? And you look at it, and then you apply how it's being applied today, and you go, that don't make sense. So I'm hoping that birthright citizenship ends up getting thrown out and, changed finally, so that we don't have people coming here and doing that. And then we're fighting over, now you have chain migration where mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, you name it, everybody's coming here, and they're jumping the line from the people who really want to come here and become American citizens and be part of the dream. These people undermine that process. So that's the big one. That I think is the most important out of the ones you have on the screen. But they're all going to have an impact on us, and they all do have an impact on us. So what are your thoughts, Ken? Which one of these do you think is the biggest issue that's going to get the most attention when the rulings come down?
Well, I think you're right. I think birthright citizenship is the biggest one. If the justices rule as I think they should, which is that it is not constitutional, if a person born of two foreign parents should not become a citizen, I think that is the biggest. And I think if they rule the right, it's going to provoke a lot of protesting on the left. But I want to pick out a different one, which I think is important. Again, not as important, but I think it's interesting, and it's the tariffs case.
Yes,
as
that's
we
my
know,
second.
Trump is basically unilaterally changing tariff agreements with different countries. And why does he what has allowed him to do that? And it's this International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which was passed in 1977. Jimmy Carter was president. In the Senate, the Democrats had a 61-38 advantage. I guess that's 99. I don't know who the other, maybe there was an independent, but the Senate had a Democratic majority, and probably even
they had a filibuster proof.
Probably. I don't know what the filibuster numbers were back then, but
60.
anyway. Yeah. Okay. Now the House had a Democrat majority of 292 versus 143 Republicans. So a huge Democratic majority.
Veto proof. Yeah, that's a veto proof.
And now what did that law say? It was national emergency. It said the president can declare a national emergency and the president could do various things. There's a number of things in there, but one of the things he could do is negotiate tariffs with countries, right? And that's what Trump is doing. Now, this is an example that if you ask Democrats, what is Trump doing that is so, dictatorial? They usually, when I argue with somebody, they'll say, oh, if I have to explain it to you, it's not worth explaining because they don't know. But sometimes they will mention this. But you see what the problem is? The Democrats passed it, and now Trump is using it. So it's not that Trump is doing something dictatorial. The Democrats gave the power to the president to do this. Now, if you want to reverse it, I'm totally okay with that. Yeah. But don't call Donald Trump a dictator for him using the laws that the democratically elected House and Senate and president passed in 1977. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think what the Supreme Court is going to say is you guys passed it. If you don't like it, change the law.
Right.
And so the House and the Senate are going to have to pass a law, which I don't think will happen because the Republicans are in control right now. But even if the Democrats were in control and they passed it, Donald Trump would be able to veto it. Yeah. And so I don't see this changing. I think Trump is going to continue to have the power to negotiate tariffs. But again, my main point is Democrats, don't call him a dictator for this because you are the ones who passed this law back in 1977.
And I think that's exactly what the Supreme Court is going to have to do because there's really not a clear constitutional issue here. So when you're talking about the law that you're suggesting that was passed, that law was passed by the Senate and the House, and I assume signed by the president at the time. Mm-hmm. And he's going by that law. So what is unconstitutional? Is that law unconstitutional? They're going to say exactly that, Ken. They're going to say you are going to have to change that because what they're arguing is the Congress has the power of the purse, right? So Trump isn't taxing. He isn't creating anything new for, he hasn't created a new law to put tariffs on countries. He's basically using this as a national security tool to make sure that our jobs and our resources are being sourced here in America. And when countries are doing things against the American system and they're attacking us via economically, he's using it as a weapon to fight back, to say, hey, you have increased car tariffs so high, we can't sell any cars in Europe. We can't sell cars in Japan. We can't sell cars in India. So since we can't, your tariffs are so high, we're going to shut down your car companies. We're going to make BMW and Mercedes. If you don't build them here, the tariff's going to be 100%. But if you build them here and you hire Americans, hey, we'll give you a break there. So basically, he's using it as a weapon. The billions and billions of dollars that are being created by these tariffs. He's not saying I'm going to, he has said he'll give them back to the American people, but the fight isn't about the money. The fight is about him using tariffs or creating tariffs. The money is going into the government pot. And eventually what the Congress should do is say, okay, we've got $200 billion in tariffs, create a fund and put it into the, reduce the American federal tax, burden by every year those offset the taxes the American people have to pay, something to that effect, right? Yeah. But to your point, he's using a current law. He's using it as national security, which he has full control in the Constitution. So it's a no-brainer to me that they are going to punt on this, and they should. They should say, we don't have, he's using a law you created, change the law. That's it's as simple as that. And then I have to throw this in, Ken, because it amazes me that she's a Supreme Court justice. And Ketanji Brown Jackson will be jumping up and down saying, we need to give those tariffs back because Trump's a bad guy. And I don't know what else to say because I don't even think I have a law degree. I think I never passed the bar. She's going to have some left field, and Comey Barrett's going to look over and go, "You're really embarrassing the women of this world," and then we'll move on from there. Bad joke, but.
No, I know, but if you compare Amy Coney Barrett to Ketanji Brown Jackson, it's kind of similar to comparing Marco Rubio to AOC. I mean, these people are just foolish. It's like the nuts are trying to run the nut house. We finally have the adults running the Supreme Court. We have the adults running the administration. But, we just know that these knuckleheads are there wanting power, the AOCs and the Ketanjis of the world. And it's scary. And that should be enough motivation to get everybody out to the polls for the midterms and, of course, for the presidential election. And, that'll be coming up in a couple of years.
Absolutely.
So, Rich, what else? Anything else?
Was that it on our agenda? I just wanted to...
We have other things, but these, I think, we've gone on for a while.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you want to maybe talk about Cuba for a second.
Yeah, well, I think foreign policy in general. I think right now, Iran is the biggest thing going on. I'm hoping, this is my hope, that the negotiations are a stall tactic that President Trump is using to just get everything in place to take out the Ayatollah and his regime, because the Iranian people, the 30,000 or whatever the number is that have been killed by this brutal regime, President Trump made a promise, and he needs to, and he put a red line in. And when I see the way the media is positioning this as a nuclear agreement again, the no nuclear weapons for, I thought we had that discussion already, and we annihilated their capacity. So to suggest that we're going to negotiate an Iranian nuclear deal really kind of pisses me off when I see it being positioned that way. And the president's been kind of quiet about it. Netanyahu was at the White House. They've met 7 times already over the course of his second term here. I'm thinking there's going to be, this is what I think is going to happen. I think the Israelis have the intelligence capabilities in Iran much better than we do, because they obviously track them more closely. And they are going to be supported by our military in a secondary role. And the Mossad, is it their Mossad?
Mossad,
they are going to go in and they're going to take out Ayatollah. They're going to take out all of the upper echelons somehow. And we're going to be there as backup to make sure that no missiles leave the Iranian landmass. We're going to take out whatever's left of their air defenses, which isn't very much. But we're going to be strategically located to support Israel. And we may not know it's Israel, but I just believe that the only way forward for the Iranian people is the Ayatollah needs to be gone. Now, whether or not they're negotiating that quietly somewhere, get on a plane and get the hell out of there, I don't think they are. I think they're willing to go to the death. The way that regime is set up, they have people in all their different tribes around the country, all their different communities, for lack of a better word. They're very tribal in many ways. They are embedded, and that's how they keep control of their people. They're rats and they're enforcers, and they are going to be, right now they're negotiating that he leaves, but they're going to have to get the rats too. So I think it's better to eliminate the Ayatollah, not give him an opportunity to get the hell out, and support Israel and keep our troops out of harm's way as much as possible, and move forward and let Iran, the former Shah, or the former whatever his prince
Shah,
or whatever.
Yep.
The Shah, transition back into a more democratic Iran, which those people have been kept down for so long, and they are generally a good people. They're Persian. They're not this radical, they're not a radical Muslim
Arab
nation.
Yeah.
They've been a very prosperous nation over years, and they're a very educated nation, and we need to let them get back to business so that their lives can change.
Rich, I don't think you'll get a better analysis of the situation on mainstream media, cable news, than what you just said there. I honestly, I've not thought a whole lot about it, but I think your insight just rings very true. Because just like, you mentioned, Trump had a red line, and the red line was killing people. And
they killed a lot of people.
And they have killed a lot of people. And unlike, I remember when Obama drew a red line in Syria and basically said, if you guys use chemical weapons against your people, that's a red line. And then Syria did it, and Obama didn't do anything.
He
right?
moved the
And
line,
so we have no credibility. But Donald
Right.
Trump, when he says something, and he just has to say it. It's not like, oh, I promise. It's not like, you're listening to him and it's a stronger statement. He just says it. And when he says it, that means something. So I think he is going to keep his word. But my biggest concern has always been, I don't want boots on the ground. And I do think that that's Trump's, that's his gut instinct also, is not to put the boots on the ground. But he's not against dropping some bombs and supporting Israel, and Israel say, we'll do it. We just need a little backup. We need you to take out some of the electricity and things like that. I think Trump would support that. And so, we'll see if what you're saying comes true. But I'll tell you what, if I had $1,000 that I wanted to put down on what's going to happen in Iran, I would say that I would put it on what you're saying, because I think that's a very good analysis there, Rich.
I appreciate it. We will see. It's coming soon. I think somebody had mentioned that one of the reasons that we haven't moved, even though we have assets there, they're pretty much in place, is the Olympics, and that he's trying not to, I guess, what would you call that? Upstaging the Olympics to a degree. I'm not sure that that's strong enough. But
that sounds reasonable. The Olympics is when all the countries come together and compete. Let's not not take a country out. Let's not, even if it's justified, let's not engage in military activities while the Olympics are going on, and they're almost over anyway.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something on Sunday night after the closing ceremony. It might be the closing ceremony on the Ayatollah. That would be a good thing. So, Ken.
Well, just one other thing, and wouldn't it be interesting if you're talking about Iran, and that they have been a thorn in the West Side for a long time. They've persecuted their people for a long time. Wouldn't it be interesting if what you said actually comes to fruition? And then Cuba, I think Cuba is withering on the vine right now because you take away the Venezuela oil shipments. And, they've been struggling since Castro took over. But now you don't have oil or gas to fuel basic things like even Havana supposedly is having blackouts. And so it almost seems like they're going to wither on a vine, and there's going to be maybe a regime change in Cuba. And wouldn't that, again, be interesting? All these dictatorships around the country that have been, again, terrorizing their people for a long time. Wouldn't it be amazing if Donald Trump was the reason we have freedom again in these once prosperous nations?
Yeah, it would be fantastic. And I have no doubt that we're closer to that than ever. But circumstances will definitely be interesting going forward, and we'll see for sure. All right. And Ken, I think that wraps up episode 84 for us. As always, we hope you'll follow us on Hands on Politics, Facebook, and on X, Hands on Politics. On YouTube, it's Hands on Politics with Rich Ken 146. And if you need to touch base with us, hop25@AOL.com. And if you were out there, give us some thumbs up. We hope you enjoyed the show, and the recording will be up on our YouTube channel, and we'll link it to our other social media. And that ends today's edition, Ken. It's always a pleasure. And we will see you next week on Hands on Politics. And we're a couple of brothers from the Bronx get together on a weekly basis to discuss the issues of the day, making politics understandable for those who want to understand politics. Ken, we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
All right. Take care, Rich.
Take care.
Okay.